Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. We're going in-depth on the ballot questions in advance of the November 4th election. In this segment, we're talking about a question that will appear on ballots in the lower and outer Cape towns that gauges voters' views on legalizing marijuana. It is a non-binding question that is appearing on ballots in 56 communities across the Commonwealth. The wording is to regulate and tax marijuana the same way as alcohol. I'm talking with Barnstable County Sheriff James Cummings, who has been in law enforcement on Cape Cod for decades and is against legalizing marijuana. Sheriff Cummings, thank you for being with us today.
Hi, Laura. It's good to be here.
First, can you give the listeners some of your background in law enforcement on Cape Cod because it is so extensive?
Sure. I began my career on Cape Cod as a member of the state police in 1977. I was assigned to the Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office, and I spent 21 of my 23 years on the state police in the District Attorney's Office investigating all sorts of crimes, including narcotics, and pretty much ended my career at the District Attorney's Office as the Chief Homicide Investigator for District Attorney Rollins. I retired from the state police and ran for sheriff, and have been sheriff since 1999. I was sworn in, elected in November of 1998, and have held that position since then, and very much involved in now the correction side of things and trying to rehabilitate the folks who have committed crimes and are sent to jail, and with special attention to substance abuse treatment for folks who are in custody and sent to jail. And our efforts on that part of the deal is to make sure that people, when they come to jail, their time isn't wasted, and we send them back to the community in a better shape than they were when they came in, and they have an opportunity of at least a foundation to give them a step up in fighting their addiction problem.
Now, with your extensive background in law enforcement on Cape Cod, I think you know that area probably better than almost anyone. Now, over the past few years, there has been this rollback on laws concerning marijuana, first decriminalizing small amounts, then allowing medical marijuana. What do you think about those changes, and has it had an impact on law enforcement on Cape Cod?
Well, when this initially started, way back when, with the medical marijuana and reducing it to an individual being able to hold an ounce, anything below an ounce of marijuana, and just pay a $100 fine, making that a civil offense rather than a criminal offense. I mean, back then, we knew this was the beginning of an effort by a group of people to eventually legalize marijuana, and I think eventually to legalize all sorts of illegal substances. I was against it then, and I remain against it. I mean, I have people right now serving time in the correctional facility that are here because of their addiction and misuse of alcohol. We have people that are coming to jail because they're in the third and fourth offense of driving under the influence of alcohol, and I think marijuana is just going to add to that problem. And where we have breathalyzers and field sobriety tests that can help police officers relative to when someone's under the influence of alcohol, we really don't have anything except for a blood test for how much THC they have in their system if they're smoking marijuana. And society hasn't handled alcohol very well, so I just have a great problem with adding another substance that alters an individual way of thinking and hampers their ability to, act in a normal manner when they're under the influence of marijuana.
Now, I guess people do point to alcohol as one of their reasons where they say, if that's allowed, why shouldn't marijuana be allowed? And they say that for when you're driving, that far more dangerous to have someone behind the wheel who has had too much alcohol than someone who has had marijuana in their system. What do you say to that?
I know that's said. I don't know how true it is. I mean, I think they were equally as bad. And if we can't if we have people serving time in jail and we have citizens getting killed in the highways because people are under the influence of alcohol, does it make any sense to add another substance that would be available to people legally to get themselves, inebriated with marijuana now, and along with alcohol in some cases, or even if they're separate? Are we just asking for more trouble, and are we looking to have to build more beds and more spaces to rehabilitate people in the correctional system in order to accommodate this effort to make marijuana legal?
And people also seem to point to the Prohibition era and say that by decriminalizing alcohol, you put some of those criminals sort of out of business, if you will, because they didn't have this illegal activity to make money on. So people point to that as a reason to do that for marijuana. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, it still doesn't resolve the issue of people who abuse it. I mean, there are plenty of folks out there who can have, a drink of wine with dinner and at a restaurant and drive home, and they don't have any problem. But, it's just, I just see it adding to the mix of hazards that we're going to have in society when we make something available. I know they're talking about taxing it, but if you overtax it or there's heavy tax, then it's still going to keep that black market going, because people are going to go to the black market to not pay the taxes. And I think, too, recently there's been a lot of discussion relative to the medical effects of smoking marijuana. So I think we have to look at this very closely, get some medical folks involved, some law enforcement folks involved, public health people, and just take a look at what we're doing to ourselves by legalizing a substance, like marijuana. I mean, look at all the effort and all the money that was spent relative to cigarettes, and we pretty much now, most folks are cast out if they're smoking a cigarette. So now, if we had all the health issues that we talked about that were the dangers of smoking cigarettes, we're going to add marijuana to that. I think it has to be studied further for the medical side of things and just see how much medically we're going to hurt society. And if it's going to be the same as cigarettes, then obviously whatever tax we put on it isn't going to be enough to pay for the damage that marijuana is going to do both medically and physically to folks that are so inclined to use it.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. We're talking about a non-binding ballot question that will appear on the ballots in the Lower and Outer Cape, asking if voters want to legalize marijuana and regulate it and tax it like alcohol. I'm talking to Sheriff Jim Cummings, who is against the legalization of marijuana. Now, Jim, people on the other side say that the war on drugs has not really worked, and that this idea of legalizing marijuana and perhaps other drugs, the enforcement will improve with the legalization. What do you say to that?
If you kind of relate it to the oldest crime, as they say, on the books forever, is prostitution. I mean, we haven't stopped prostitution, but it's controlled. It's not rampant. There's not prostitutes on every street corner. So, I know it's easy to say the war on drugs has failed, but what would it be like if nothing were done, back when this war on drugs initially started?
Another argument is that people talk about marijuana as not being addictive in the same way narcotics are, and even as alcohol is, and that it does not impair drivers in the same way that alcohol does, which is legal. How do you respond to that?
Well, there's a young college student that's on trial up in federal court right now, Robel Filipos, who was involved with the perpetrators of the marathon bombing, and basically his defense is that I was stoned on marijuana and I don't remember anything and I don't know what I did. So, apparently it appears some people to get involved in such a serious incident as that, using marijuana as defense for their actions.
Now, do you characterize marijuana in the same category as narcotics in terms of their danger to the community? Well,
I definitely, in my experience with the people I deal with, I say it's definitely a gateway drug. I know some people disagree with that. They say everyone who smokes marijuana, doesn't end up shooting heroin. But in my experience, everyone who's shooting heroin started by smoking marijuana. So I definitely think it is. People, they get high on the marijuana and then they want to get a little higher or try something a little quicker or, something different, and they move up to another drug. And I definitely feel that it's definitely something that is a gateway drug. And I had an inmate back when we were first going through this discussion relative to legalizing that less of an ounce, making that a civil infraction. And I asked him what his thoughts were, and he said that when he was in high school, he started smoking marijuana, and it just took over his life. He didn't study. He didn't do well socially. He didn't play sports. All he did was smoke marijuana. And he said, and because of that, I lost those 4 years of my life when I was in high school because all I did was get high all the time. So things like that, I think that's kind of, from a direct source, and it's well put how it just wasted 4 high school years of this young fella's life. And, eventually he was here. I forget exactly what his charges were here for, but, the biggest thing to him was wasting those years of his life.
Now, when laws are rolled back like this, and for instance, when they made a small amount of marijuana possession legal, does that create problems for law enforcement?
Well, in fact, the way it was done, if you have less than an ounce, it's a $100 fine, a civil infraction, but there's no penalty if you don't pay the fine, and there's no mechanism to collect the fine. So basically, it turned out to just be a joke, and pretty much nothing is done with it any longer. It's just there's no way to enforce the law. So I mean, the legislature certainly has to put more effort into designing these laws when they do it, and avoid these missteps that happen along the way. And another example is the current medical marijuana law. I mean, it's just a mess. It's been going on for a couple of years now, and nothing is up and running for the folks who need it for medical purposes. So it just shows that, we kind of rush into these things, and that's why I think we have to maybe have a broader discussion relative to all the effects of legalizing marijuana or making it available for medical purposes. And again, back to what are the health damages that are going to result from people, inhaling this substance.
And in the last less than a minute left, what message would you like to leave with voters?
Let's think long and hard about this. It seems like a minor vote. Yeah, everyone smokes marijuana anyway. It's around. Let's legalize it. Let's get taxes out of it. But let's think about the effects of what your vote is going to be. When it started several years ago, we knew that this was the goal, was to legalize this stuff, and here we are 7 years later, and I'm guarantee it's going to be on the 2016 ballot to legalize marijuana. So I hope the people on the Cape are a little smarter than everybody else and vote against, this taxing or legalization of marijuana.
And unfortunately, we're out of time. Sheriff, thank you so much for being with us here today.
My pleasure, Laura.
You can read and hear more about this issue and all the candidates in local contested races by going to our website, capecod.com, and clicking on the election banner. I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.